She accustomed in a brittle chrism blazer, smiling like the cameras were her allies. But by the end of the hour, that smile would be connected gone, replaced by fire, fury, and the complete of a studio chair actuality shoved aback on live television. No one at Afar Women expected the Duchess of Sussex to lose her composure. No one accepted Denise Welch to authority her ground. And certainly, no one accepted what Meghan said in the final account of the segment. This wasn't daytime TV. It was a public reckoning cat and mouse to ignite. The set of loose women shimmered with bendable lights in the fizz of anticipation. ITV had pulled off a above-booking coup. Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex herself, was set to arise for a warm and above-board chat. The producers promised a balanced, admiring conversation. But everyone in the architecture knew a back Meghan stepped to simulate that complete stage. The stakes would shift. Ruth Langford, ever the accommodating host, accustomed the audience with accomplished ease. Good afternoon, everyone. We accept an actual appropriate guest joining us today. She's a mother, a philanthropist, an advocate, and of course royalty. Amuse acceptable Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. Applause erupted. Meghan entered with assured steps, waving agilely to the crowd. She wore an ivory blazer over bendable biscuit trousers, hair affianced aback in an archetypal low bun. She nodded at Ruth. Afresh took her seat between panelists Denise Welch, Kay Adams, and Janet Street Porter. Thank you so abundant for accepting me, B. Meghan added smoothly, her articulation velvet and camera trained. It's admirable to be here back in the UK, alike if just briefly. Ruth smiled as if acquainted of the thin ice below her guest's words. We're captivated to accept you. I apperceive your schedule is packed, so we really appreciate your time. The Aboriginal few minutes were light. Meghan discussed her children's book, her foundation's latest campaign for girls' education, and the importance of affection in media narratives. She battened in polished sentences, pivoting calmly from topic to topic. The admirers listened, intrigued, if not yet stirred. Then Ruth, with her about face and tone, gestured to the panel. Let's open up the chat a bit. Denise, I believe you had a question. Denise Welch sat forward, able and composed. Yes, acknowledge you, Ruth. Meghan, you've announced in abounding interviews about how difficult your time was oral the royal family, and I accept those struggles. But some admirers might wonder, aback it comes to difficult situations, such as your time on Suits or assertive high-profile friendships ending. Does there any time appear a time when you exceed maybe the environment wasn't consistently the problem? A polite version of the catechism anybody was too scared to ask. Meghan's eyes didn't blink. Denise, she began with a saccharine edge. I came actuality to talk about my accepted work, not to bethink old narratives. I anticipate I've already addressed that absolutely about in fact. Denise gave a bendable nod. Of course, but I do anticipate bodies are absorbed in understanding how those experiences shaped your journey. Not aloof what happened, but your angle on it all now. Perspective? Meghan echoed, her jaw tightening anytime so slightly. That's an interesting chat advancing from you. Denise didn't flinch. There was an abrupt pause. Janet confused in her chair. Kay glanced sideways at Ruth. Well, Ruth cut in, smiling nervously. Why don't we talk about your podcast, Meghan? You've featured some absurd women. Mariah Carey, Serena Williams. But Meghan had pivoted back. You know, Denise, she said, you've fabricated absolutely a career of critiquing women in the accessible eye. It must be nice sitting there and judging others from an adequate chair. Denise blinked. I'm not judging, Meghan. I'm asking questions. And I'm answering, Meghan airtight back. Just maybe not the way you expected. The admirers confused in their seats. Kay attempted to mediate. Perhaps we can touch on article a little lighter. How has abiding to the UK acquainted this time? Meghan smiled tightly. Well, it's not like I was rolling out an acceptable mat, but it's fine. I'm acclimated to walking into rooms area. I'm not absolutely wanted. The flat grew still. Ruth looked down at her cards. Let's allocution about Harry, Janet said, acutely aggravating to accompany the conversation about human. How is he doing? Does he absence home? Meghan turned her arch slowly. Harry's accomplishing just fine, acknowledge you. He has an absolute family now, one that sees him. The temperature dropped several degrees. Denise interjected gently. Do you absence him being abutting with his brother? Meghan gave a dry chuckle. You assume actual invested in my husband's clandestine life. Maybe ask him next time. That's fair, Denise said calmly. But some of our admirers do wonder if adaptation is ever something on the horizon. I'm not here to date an ancestors' reunion, Meghan replied, her accent sharp. I'm here because your producers begged my team for months. Chaos steer her throat. Janet confused again. Ruth affected a smile. We're actual animated you're here, Meghan. Let's move on to article I know you're amorous about, your mental health initiatives. But the atom had already ignited. Meghan, beyond her legs, leaned back in her armchair like royalty board of court and muttered, "Let's just see how far we get afore the next interrogation." The articulation concluded with an awkward cut to commercial. Abaft the scenes, producers scrambled. Meghan pulled out her phone and Denise, she artlessly adapted her mic and waited because she wasn't finished yet. The air in the Afar Women's studio had taken on a charge. Afterwards, Meghan's icy remarks and acquiescent aggressive deflection. Best of the console remained quiet, ambiguous whether to advance forward or let the Duchess breach on her own. But Denise Welch was never one to shy away. She austere her throat gently, her voice calm but firm. Meghan, I aloof want to accept something. You've spoken about aloofness abounding times, but at the same time, you've done documentaries, interviews, and accounting books. Some people feel there's a contradiction there. How would you acknowledge to that? Meghan aged her arch slightly, a smirk playing on her lips. Ah, the classic. You said you capital privacy, but you're on Netflix argument, she said, her voice decrepit in condescension. Well, Denise, absent aloofness doesn't mean becoming invisible. It agency controlling your narrative. Maybe that's a bit too complex for some bodies to grasp. The studio collectively gasped. Denise blinked, arresting the jab without flinching. I anticipate our admirers are more than able of compassionate. Nuance, she replied gently. But absolutely you can understand how it appears aback someone says they appetite space. A fresh release is a 6-part documentary. Meghan scoffed. Are we actively still doing this? It's giving Tuan Denise. Maybe apprehend a new tabloid. Ruth Langsford shifted abominably in her seat, aggravating to redirect. Conceivably we can move on to your children, Meghan. How are Archie and Leet adjusting to activity al fresco the royal spotlight? But Meghan wasn't absolution go. No, Ruth. I anticipate we should stick with Denise's abridged obsession, she said, her accent growing added mocking. Maybe she's acquisitive this will accomplish it into the headlines tomorrow. Denise let out a quiet breath, aggravating to breach grounded. I'm not attractive for headlines. I'm looking for honesty. That's what our audience values. Meghan leaned forward, resting her bend badly on the table. Bluntness is subjective. Or didn't they advise you that in journalism school? If you went to one. The room fell silent. Adams exchanged a worried glance with Janet Street Porter, who artlessly aloft in countenance as if thinking, oh no. She didn't. Still calm, Denise approved again. Let's talk about Prince Harry then. There have been letters that things amid you two have changed, that he's been apparent more in the UK afresh afterwards you. Is everything all appropriate amid you two? Meghan's smile froze. She looked directly at Denise, her articulation bottomward to an icy whisper. That's none of your business. Denise nodded respectfully. Of course, I understand, but you accept aggregate so much about before. Bodies are curious, and you've fabricated your accord a central allotment of your narrative. Meghan crossed her accoutrements tightly. Well, maybe I've abstrused my lesson. Aloof because I opened a window doesn't beggarly I gave you permission to breach bottomward the door. Are you two still together? Denise asked softly, allotment her words with surgical precision. That's all I asked. Meghan's jaw tightened. He's accomplishing what he needs to do. I'm accomplishing what I charged to do. We're both adults. That's how healthy people function. But again, acknowledge you for your concern. It was a carefully curated answer, but the restriction in her face betrayed added than her words allowed. Ruth stepped in already more. All right, conceivably it's time to focus on your contempo assignment in Wanda. But Meghan shot aback immediately. No, let's finish this little claiming first. I wouldn't appetite Denise to feel like she left any meat on the bone. Denise leaned back, her easily acclaimed bankrupt in her lap. I'm not interrogating you, Meghan. I'm aggravating to accept the inconsistencies. That's allotment of journalism. Meghan laughed dryly. This is not a courtroom, Denise. You're not cross-examining me on the attestant stand. Maybe relax a little. Try being supportive of Edition Woman for once. That hit deep. The flat audience shifted uncomfortably. The restriction had moved accomplished awkward. It was now seeping into every word, every pause, every glance. But Denise was a professional. Support doesn't beggarly dark agreement. Women can authority anniversary added accountable, too. Oh, additional me the babe power lecture. Meghan snapped. You fabricated your career off criticizing added women from that chair. So, absolve me if I don't accept your solidarity. Ruth tried again. Let's move to your foundation's work on affectionate health, Meghan. But Meghan was laser-focused now, clumsy or unwilling to let go. No, I'm curious, Denise. Since you assume to apperceive so much about my marriage, about my life, why don't you acquaint the admirers what it's like actuality in my shoes? What it's like being abject beyond continence by royal protocol and afresh dumped by the same public you approve to help. Denise raised her eyebrows. I never claimed to know what your activity is like, but you chose public life. You chose to acquaint your story and that agency others will respond to it. Not consistently the way you like. Meghan sneered. Acknowledge you for the lecture. Should I kneel now or wait until you duke me an archetype of your autobiography? The affection in the allowance soured. Alike K. Adams looked like she was silently pleading for addition to footfall in. Still, Denise connected softly, respectfully. When you batten with Oprah, you said your mental bloom was at risk. That was powerful. It resonated with so many women. But aback those aforementioned women see you lashing out like this, dismissing questions with sarcasm. It confuses them. That's all I'm saying. Meghan's eyes narrowed. You don't get to police my agony expression. If I'm fiery, it's because I've been austere and I'm not here to comedy nice so you feel comfortable. Ruth Acclaim approved again. Perhaps aloof or abbreviate break. Let's cool off and appear back too. But Meghan stood up hardly in her seat, not fully rising, but authoritative her ascendancy felt. I'm altogether fine, Ruth. I aloof didn't come actuality to best afar by addition who still thinks acid Union Jack earrings makes her a patriot. The admirers let out an aggregate oof. Denise pursed her lips, acutely stung, but abnegation to lash back. Look, Meghan, I don't hate you. I don't like animosity you. But I think you've congenital apple area only your affliction matters. Area anybody else is aloof and adversary in your story. Meghan Boring stood now for absolute this time. She wasn't abrogation yet, but the posture said it all. To everyone watching, she said with an algid smile. This is what happens aback you speak your accuracy in Britain. You get mocked, minimized, and angry into the punchline of your own trauma. Afresh staring directly at Denise, she whispered. And they admiration why I left. The studio lights seemed to bake hotter. Meghan Markle remained continuing beside her chair, her announcement bound and defiant, arms beyond like a bank no one was allowed to climb. She hadn't larboard yet, but anybody could feel she was one spark abroad from walking off the set entirely. Denise Welch sat frozen, her hands still bankrupt acclaim in advance of her, every beef in her anatomy visibly working to arrest article far more volatile. Her aperture were tight, but her eyes austere with calm fire. Ruth Langford approved to accomplishment the show. Meghan, conceivably we can about face the conversation to your altruistic work. The Arkewell Foundation, your recent initiative on women's admission to education. That's article our audience would adulation to apprehend about. Meghan didn't look at Ruth. Her boring remained locked on Denise. Funny, she said with a smirk. You didn't appetite to allocution about that before. You were all absolutely busy dissecting my alliance and mental health. But now we're suddenly interested in philanthropy. How convenient. Denise inhaled slowly. K. Adams bankrupt the silence. I don't think anyone actuality is aggravating to bend you, Meghan. We aloof capital a conversation. Oh, please. Meghan snapped. If you wanted a conversation, you'd amusement me like a human being, not a headline, Janet Street Porter decrepit beneath her breath. Well, you absolutely accomplish abundant of those. Meghan's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? Janet coiled her hand. Nothing, aloof an observation. Denise assuredly aerial her chin, her articulation bland but cutting. You know, Meghan, you absolved in actuality asking to be heard, and for the aftermost 20 minutes, that's all we've done. We've listened to like a back you absolved it, mocked us, and questioned our intelligence. At what point does it become bright this isn't a conversation? It's a monologue. The admirers reacted with a bendable beachcomber of gasps and murmurs. Meghan stepped advanced slowly, anniversary heel click, punctuating her fury. I came here thinking I was sitting with women who understood struggle, women who'd stand with me, not act like gatekeepers to some anachronous abstraction of British womanhood. Denise calmly uncrossed her legs and leaned hardly forward. And I came here thinking I'd be speaking with someone who capital a dialogue, not a stage. But here we are. Meghan's accent sharpened. You anticipate I appetite a stage? You anticipate I enjoy actuality scrutinized for every breath I take. You're accomplishing an abundant job acting like it, Denise replied, her voice assuredly rising, air-conditioned and deliberate, like ice melting over flame. Because instead of application this platform to allocution about the causes you affirmation to care about, you've spent it belittling everyone about you. The audience clapped aloof once, but loud. Meghan's face flushed, acutely extemporaneous for the panel and the accessible to applause against her. Do you accept any abstraction what it's like to be boltered by the press? Meghan snapped. Denise didn't flinch. I do. I lived it too. I've battled mental illness about for years. I've buried friends. I've had my own headlines twisted into bizarre shows. The difference is I didn't weaponize it. I didn't about-face it into a brand. Gasps echoed again. Meghan's eyes widened in disbelief. That's disgusting. You're accusing me of profiting off my trauma. Denise looked anon at her. I'm saying if you appetite to be a parent is real, then stop affairs yourself as untouchable. A connected blackout followed. Meghan angry to Ruth, about argumentation but still proud. Are you activity to let this woman abashment me on civic television? Ruth was visibly shaken. No one is shaming you, but we are aggravating to get past the script. Meghan aback laughed, but it wasn't humorous. It was sharp, hollow, and abounding of disbelief. I should have accepted bigger than to appear here, she muttered. She took a footfall aback toward her armchair as if reconsidering walking off, but instead placed her easily on the back blow and leaned in against the panel. You apperceive what's exhausting, she asked. Sending your accomplished activity fighting to be heard, alone to be told by people like Denise that your actuality too loud. Denise didn't alternate this time. And you apperceive what's exhausting? Watching someone aberration every catechism into a personal advance because they debris to answer honestly. The restriction snapped like a wire. Meghan took one apathetic step forward and stared bottomward the panel. I hope this was account the ratings, she said coldly, because I'm done. Not just with this interview, but with this entire deception you alarm journalism. She turned to the audience. Anticipate twice about the bodies you let ascertain your truth. She didn't delay for a response. Meghan Markle pulled off her mic, tossed it assimilate the table, and absolved off the set afterwards edition word. The studio door shut abaft her with a bendable final click. Silence. For a connected moment, no one spoke, not alike the hosts. Then Denise assuredly exhaled and angry to Ruth. I didn't appetite it to end like that. Ruth nodded gently. None of us did. The studio air was thick. You could cut the tension with a knife. Meghan Markle stood in the centermost of the afar women's set, her animation short, her hands clenched into tight, abashed fists. The absolute allowance seemed to authority its breath. Alike the cameraman had stopped moving. Denise Welch, still seated, her posture beeline and composed, met Meghan's blaze with a calmness that only years of media warfare could teach. Her voice, low but firm, broken through the silence. Meghan, she said carefully, if this is so unbearable, if every question feels like an attack, afresh, maybe this platform isn't for you. That was it. The fuse. Meghan's eyes flared. So now you're cogent me to leave? Really? Is this what journalism is now? Pushing people until they breach aloof to get a viral clip? Denise stood slowly, her palms open. No, I'm cogent you that if you're not accommodating to accept an honest conversation afterwards axis every question into an insult. Afresh, maybe this discussion has run its course. Ruth Langford's articulation came through weakly. Perhaps we should aloof booty a breath. And no, Meghan cut in, eyes advanced and voice sharp. She's been advancing me from the start. Playing innocent while throwing daggers. You act like I'm paranoid, like I can't handle questions, but what you're accomplishing is gaslighting. Denise didn't flinch. What I'm accomplishing is holding you to the aforementioned accepted every public amount is captivated to. I'm not calling you names. I'm not shouting. I'm not affronted off. Meghan laughed, harsh, humorless. Oh, amused, don't pretend to be the victim here, Denise. You're the one who ambushed me. You're the one who turned this into a cross-examination. I came actuality to allocution about my work, my causes, and instead I get put on trial. Denise aged her arch almost sympathetically. Afresh, maybe you should have fabricated that bright afore advancing on to a console show. We ask questions here. It's what we do. I've done dozens of interviews, Meghan snapped. And no one has any time advised me with this akin of condescension. You don't appetite answers. You appetite headlines. You appetite another angry Meghan moment to ammunition your toxic media cycle. Denise inhaled sharply, then said what Cypher expected. Then leave, Meghan. If you accept you're being mistreated, if you absolutely think your actuality abused here, a fresh go. The words landed like a slap. Meghan stared at her, stunned. Excuse me? You heard me, Denise said, accoutrements crossed. Now you're not a prisoner. You're chargeless to go. I would never ask a bedfellow to breach in an ambience they affirmation is harming them. Meghan blinked hard. She wasn't used to actuality told to leave, to be dismissed. I don't charge your permission to leave, Denise. She hissed, reaching for her microphone clip. I'm done being your punching bag. I don't charge to justify myself to a daytime allocution show panel. Ruth approved again, desperate. Meghan, please, let's de-escalate. No, Ruth, Meghan snapped, her articulation alveolate through the abashed studio. You let her sit there and breach me apart. You let this happen. You let it become a circus. She turned to Denise. And you? You're not a journalist. You're an adored gossip columnist with a camera. I achievement you enjoy the ratings. Denise didn't respond. She didn't charge to. Meghan ripped off the mic, alone it on the couch and angry for the exit. Security had amorphous effective carefully against the stage, not to escort her, but to ensure nothing got worse. But aloof before she stepped off the stage, Meghan angry one last time. Let the Apple see this. Let them see what happens aback a woman refuses to be silenced. You can circuit it any way you want. But this is exactly why I larboard the aristocratic family. Because bodies like you anticipate blackout is grace and accuracy is arrogance. Denise responded coolly. And bodies like you think every altercation is persecution. Goodbye, Meghan. The flat aperture swung shut abaft her. Ruth stood in place, visibly shaken. Janet looked like she'd seen an apparition, and Denise. Denise simply exhaled and sat down. Afterwards, a moment of stunned silence. Ruth austere her throat. We'll be back afterwards the break. The camera's achromatic to black. What just happened on Afar Women will go bottomward as one of the best atomic daytime moments in British television history. A royal bedfellow affronted off. A panelist refusing to aback bottomward and viewers everywhere allurement the aforementioned question. Who was absolutely in the right? Was Denise Welch blamed too adamantine, or was Meghan Markle afraid to be challenged? Let us apperceive what you anticipate in the comments. And if you appetite added adventurous belief like this, celebrity confrontations, raw moments, and absolute talk, accomplish abiding to subscribe and about face on notifications. Because on this channel, we don't do scripted fluff. We appearance you the drama they approve to edit.